Welcome to CXO, a magical podcast to help you serve better and concoct experiences that are superlative in nature. I'm your host, Supriya Sharma, bringing to you in each episode didactic nuggets so you can get inspired to sprinkle stardust in your company, your home, and the community on the whole.
Let's welcome our guest for today, Elke Dens. She's a tourism marketing maven and one of the major driving forces to lead VisitFlanders into travel to tomorrow, a vision on tourism that is based on regeneration. As chairwoman of the marketing group of the European Travel Commission, Elke has been aligning the marketing directors from 28 countries in Europe, one around and the same brand and strategy with a focus on a long-term sustainable added value. She's been assigned as expert of COVID-19 Tourism Recovery Program of the United Nations, also known for her voluntary work and launching projects like FairBnB. Elke is a proud member of the board of the Travel Foundation and the Impact Travel Alliance. Welcome to CXO, Elke.
Thank you, Supriya, and thanks for the invitation on your platform.
I'm so excited today because tourism and travel, this is something so close to my heart. So I'm already excited and I can't wait actually to ask you questions around the customer experience in this segment. LK, coming from a marketing background and you've done great work in having Flanders and launch into the travel to tomorrow kind of spirit. What is the real role of a marketer in shaping that experience for a customer who is willing to travel to far off or near off destinations maybe in order to rejuvenate herself or himself?
Well, thank you for that question because I think you're right. It's absolutely an important role that a marketeer needs to play. And I think most of all, the marketeer is the translator of the need of a customer into his organization. Because it's not the role of the marketeer to create an experience himself, because therefore you have other departments in your organization, or maybe partners do this, because if you work for a destination, you don't create the product yourself always. So I think regardless of who is really creating the experience, it is the role of the marketeer to very well translate the needs of his customer, so that the product that gets developed is really spot on, an answer to his questions or to his needs. And I think this is not only always easy, because a lot of people, they create something and they are really proud of what they create, but they don't always think about who they create it for, right? So yeah, I think this is the most important role to play.
You made a very valid point. Who is the program or the product created for? That's the key, because here we are talking about the customer experience. And customers are the ones who are actually going to benefit from what we are creating as marketers in any industry for that matter. So, in terms of talking of a multifunctional experience these days, who do you think is the real customer now?
Well, I think it's an interesting evolution there in tourism, because what we see that we have always been creating something for our target group, and that was, we supposed, always the traveler, or the people that come to visit us. Our tourist attractions, we made them especially for the tourist, while now we see more and more that people that live in a place are maybe also our customers, because they are also interested in what is behind the scenes. For instance, if we organize a conference in a city, people often don't know what is happening behind the walls, and these walls we are trying to tear down, because we do think that maybe indeed it is the tourist or the traveler that is our customer. We also should take care of all the other, we can call them stakeholders, but maybe there's a thin line, because maybe they also use our experiences or our services. So maybe we should not only focus at what we have always thought as our only customer, but maybe also look at other stakeholders that could be also kind of a customer relationship that we develop with them.
Yeah, and when you talk of other stakeholders, what comes to my mind, because what I've seen in things like rural tourism, when where we are involving the villages of a particular economy into helping tourists gain a nice experience or a different experience for that matter. In that way, we are looking after the needs of both the traveler, I mean, the person who's visiting the destination, as well as the locals. So, what do you have to say about that? Take us deeper into how this symbiotic relationship is actually working these days.
Well, it really depends on the place. You talk about rural examples, indeed. I can also use examples from cities where you see that while space is more and more limited, and especially public places, you see that together with urban developers, architects, we are looking at who is using the place or who owns the place really, and who do we design the place for. And there I think our role is also very important to speak on behalf of the visitor economy. Like, there are visitors, we can call them even temporarily locals, that you should also take into account when you design something. So in cities, I think it's especially the, how do you say, the sharing of a place, and multi purposing something, a product, a design, a place, whatever. But it's not only for the locals, it's not only for the tourists, but it's really something that you should, like, maybe when you develop a swimming pool, do you develop it for the locals, or is it also for the tourists? And more creative ideas are coming, like when we are in elderly houses and we develop restaurants for the elderly people, why not open them to tourists? Or the same for refugees. So you start thinking very creatively when space is limited somehow, I think. Yeah.
Sure.
And maybe for the rural part, what is also interesting is that the locals sometimes also become part of the product or the service, because they can be the guides. They are very, tourists are very interested in how locals tell stories. So they maybe not only be a customer, but also a supplier, if you want.
Exactly. Tourists are very interested in how locals live and to live their way, especially for a few days, just to get that flavor, get that essence of the life of that particular village or city, wherever they are for that matter. It's gaining a lot of popularity actually these days. And with things like you mentioned of having limited space and designing the spaces creatively so they can be used by a multitude of people, what also comes to my mind is over tourism. So, how has it hampered the experience that tourism departments of various nations wanted to create for their customers? I mean, in places like Barcelona or in places like Brazil, where over tourism used to be a big problem, unless this COVID struck and there was then no tourism at all. So,
Yes.
how was that being tackled?
Yes, indeed. It goes from over tourism to under tourism. And but well, the prediction is that once we can start traveling again, it will go up very quickly. And that's also what I think. So the discussion about over tourism is definitely not finished. The solution, though, it really depends on the place, I think. There are multiple ways, and if you look from raise the price, right? Because if there's too much demand, you can ask a higher price. But that is something that we in Flanders, we don't like to do that, because we believe that everybody has the right to enter a place. So we must look at social, let's say social prices maybe. uh, so and otherwise tourism becomes something like only for the rich people, and I don't think that's a good evolution. So I don't like that approach. But there are different approaches, and there's one example from Tuscany. There's the a very famous museum, and everybody goes there, and they all want to see the same paintings, a bit like Louvre in Paris.
Yeah.
And what they did, they actually took the pieces of art, and they spread them around the region in Tuscany. So by doing this, they invite people to go to other places in the region and to visit the whole museum, but then, yeah, spread around Tuscany. So they put paintings in churches, they put paintings like very dispersed around the region. And yeah, this is maybe one idea. It's an idea that I like, of spreading then tourists around,
Mhm.
because then also they become much more interesting. They will stay longer in your region, they will spend more, they will really be, how do you say, very interested in the whole region, and not only in one little place or one museum in your region.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I have been using the term traveler and you use the term tourist. Is there a slight difference between the two, the tourist and a traveler? How do they differ from each other? And if at all there is a difference, what is the difference in the experience they expect from the destination?
Well, that's an interesting thing that you mentioned because I use them interchangeable, but I think nobody today wants to be called a tourist, you know? You don't consider yourself a tourist, you want to be called a traveler. So this is a funny discussion. Well, I think, yeah, indeed, if you look at a traveler, it's someone who really wants to discover something, is much more independent, while a tourist maybe is much more linked nowadays to the mass tourists, you know, group travelers, or we call them often tourists. We put them on a cruise ship or on a bus, or so.
Yeah.
I think it has, yeah, it has a more negative connotation nowadays.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know. I maybe use them in a wrong way, but I do get your point. We I think most people want to be called travelers nowadays.
Yeah, indeed. It's a personal preference, maybe, for that matter.
Yeah, but the interesting idea behind this, I think that um, we somehow commodify tourists, so we
Hmm.
make them much more negative, and this is something to think about. Like, okay, then we are degrading a customer in a way, maybe. Yeah.
Commodification, commoditizing. That's a nice term you actually put in, because as a business, as a, coming from the commercial aspect of business, we tend to commodify things, and like you said, we tend to commodify tourists. Now, how does it have an impact on the customer experience in terms of the marketing battlefront? Because, you know, according to Gartner, it is said that customer experience is the new marketing battlefront. So seeing a traveler not as a traveler maybe, but as a tourist who has been commodified, how does it impact the marketing projects or the marketing programs around destinations that way?
Yeah, well, I like to make a reference there to Joe Pine and the experience economy. I don't know if you've read the book,
Mm-hmm.
but this is really interesting because he says, like, the there is indeed a commodification that we have made, and maybe we have looked at the tourists in a service economy, someone that we offer a bed, like what does bookings.com do? They offer a bed, right?
Yeah.
Or we offer a tourist attraction. These are products, these are services, and we ask money for them. But what people are wanting to pay more for is an experience, and preferably a personal experience, a memorable experience. So they are happy if you customize an experience for them. They are happy to pay more than just to have these beds, and they can just look for the cheapest price. And this is what is actually happening in
Hmm.
tourism. Like, there's a lot of price comparison. You have Kayak, you have these meta searcher
Yeah.
platforms who just show you which hotel is offering
Mm.
the lowest price, and then you start seeing this commodification. So it really doesn't, and this is very unfortunate, because I think people are still behind. They are offering a bed, they're cleaning your room, they are doing a lot of things to have a nice stay, and you only look at the cheapest price.
Hmm.
But okay, if this is what the customer wants, I think in the tourism and travel industry, we must then create these experiences. We must, I don't know, somehow stage what we have been doing in the past, but make it more special, make it more personal for them. And I think also in Flanders we have been doing this a lot of times. And what we see nowadays, because I agree it's about experience, but what you also see is that there maybe there is a kind of commodification also in the experience economy. And I'm going to give you the example of Airbnb, if I can, because I really like Airbnb, and I use it a lot for my own business traveler. But while it used to be really a sense of belonging, being able to stay at one's house. He opens the door for you. You can get the local insights, as you were talking about earlier, which is a great experience. But often when I arrive at a place, I just get a code on my mobile phone. I need to pin, and the door opens. I don't get to see the people that live there, so there is no local who can guide me there. So somehow, and I understand, because for a lot of people it has become a business, right? But this is also a kind of commodification of an experience that was very interesting, that that I really wanted to experience. So I think it's happening also in the experience economy, that we are commodifying what we're doing. And this is something that we have been reading a lot about, and also experimenting, because the next phase, I think, in customer experience is customer transformation. And this is what people are looking for when they travel, when they say that they want to learn something, or that they want to have when they travel, they want to have a new view on life, really. It's not only a new view in the area, it's also to learn something about the life that they have been living. So this is a kind of mental transformation that some people, not all people, a lot of people just want to go to the beach, but some people are really digging deeper and looking for something that really changes their mind, or has the power to change their mind, let's say. And we have learned this especially from the battlefield tourism here, World War I, the battlefields in Flanders fields. You see that people, when they go there, they say that they change jobs, or they reunite with family, or they even cannot speak about the trip for 2 years. So it really does something with them. And this is very exciting, because of course you can say, with battlefield tourism, it's easy because people do think, it's very emotional. But we also promote art and culture here. And what we see is that you can have the same kind of effect for people that are really interested and wanting to learn about history or culture, or maybe just look for 2 hours at one and the same painting. They have, sometimes you can set the stage by creating an experience, and then if they transform or not, we cannot do anything about that. It's really something personal, but you could somehow set the stage, or try to help them to create these kind of experiences that could be transformational for a person. And this is what I really wanted to share with you, because I think it might be the next step for customer experience.
Very interesting, because it somehow relates to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, isn't it?
It is indeed. Yeah, it's like the highest stop, if you want. Yeah. And this is a very good remark, Supriya, because I also think that, when we talk about people that are not able to, let's say, have a bed to sleep in, yeah, they will not be open for these kind of experiences. So it's not, it's not possible for all people, but for the people that we see that like to travel to Flanders, they are, yeah, this is an evolution.
Sure. So it's actually about that peak of self-actualization, when you've already fulfilled your basic needs, the shelter, the food, and the clothing, and then you slowly and gradually move on, and you reach that self-actualization stage when you can afford time and expenses for experiences like these. Very, very
Exactly.
valid.
Yeah. Yeah. And when the family needs are fulfilled and everything, and you have the space to do this for yourself, or even for your family, it could also be a gathering, or a reunion of the family. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. LK, when you were talking about this Airbnb and how you've been using Airbnb, what was constantly going on in my mind was FairBnB, because when I was reading your profile, there was this project of yours, which was FairBnB. So is it in any way related to Airbnb? Tell us about FairBnB. What is it?
Absolutely. So it's actually the same. As a guest, you pay the same. As a host, you pay the same. But the things that is different is that the money, the commission, so the income that normally would go to Airbnb, which means for us that it will go to the United States, that this commission, so it's usually like 15% of a booking, it stays here. And here, I mean, in it's FairBnB Flanders that we are creating now. So it stays in Flanders, and it will go. Of course, the 50% goes to the development of the platform, because this costs money. But the other 50%, so let's say 7.5% of the amount that you pay, to stay somewhere, 7.5% goes to a local project that you, together with the local community, have defined as something that you want to invest in. So, for instance, in my local community, we have a legacy of jazz, but it's really not profitable to ask American jazz singers or players to come here because, yeah, it costs too much, and therefore we always need to ask money from the government. But now, thanks to tourists coming here and thanks to the money that they spend here, we can use this money to have more jazz festivals here. So it's good for the local people, and it's also good for people that are visiting because they also can enjoy the jazz festival. Now, what is interesting is that every local community can choose its own local project. So sometimes it's a garden that they invest in, sometimes it's public space or to make something to play for the children. So it's really up to the local communities. And what I also like about it is that this FairBnB is not open to all businesses. It's really open to small businesses. So let's say a person that has one house that he wants to share, but he cannot have 10 houses that he will share because then it becomes the business. That's what we were talking about. So it's really limited. And in this way, we also hope that we can make it really a personal experience with a welcoming guest, a sense of belonging. So what was Airbnb initially saying to his guests, that is something that we cherish and we want to proceed with that. But we also want actually the big Airbnb, but also the bookings.com, the Expedias, we also want to somehow tell them that they also should leave some money in the country that they operate and not take everything to the United States. So it's also kind of a voice there, an ambition to make somehow the world a better place.
Yeah, taking care of the social responsibility associated with business in that case.
Yes, and it's actually, like, if you look at it, it's a kind of redistribution of the money. It's not only where your office is situated that can have the taxes on what you earn, but it's also where you earn the money that should somehow get something back.
Makes sense. And when you spoke about jazz right now, I was recollecting our discussion in Florida when we met last year at the Connect Travel Conference. You were telling me about the jazz, and now I can recollect, okay, yes, when I visit Flanders the next time, I have to not miss this jazz experience. Tell us one unique experience that one should not miss when they're visiting Flanders.
Oh, that's a really difficult question because it really depends on your interest. I think we have well, if you like to cycle, we have the perfect spot to, but you really must be good at cycling. So I don't know about that. But we have art culture if you are interested in that. But at the same time, if you just want to lay on the beach, we also have a beach. If you want to have a rural experience, well, this is my garden. I don't know if you see it, but it's quite rural here. I don't want to say that we have everything for everyone because that's not the job of a marketeer. Then I would not be a good marketeer because then you end up with nothing and everything. So but yeah, if you can tell me what your interest is, Supriya, I will tell you if you can come to Flanders for that or not.
If I could, I would just come out of the screen and enter your garden. I'm so loving the greens behind you.
Yeah. Well, but we just need to realize this technology, and then you're here.
Yeah, probably that's the next level of Zoom, where they give us a real-time experience of the place without actually visiting the place.
Yeah, but the downside from that is that people might not travel anymore, right?
Well, exactly. So that brings me to the future of tourism. Actually, you made a remark on the customer transformation and how customers are realizing that peak in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And what are your final remarks on this future of tourism as a marketer and from the customer experience point of view?
Yeah, well, I'm actually writing a book about that right now, and what I think is it's called Transition in Tourism, and transition is really the transition that you see happening everywhere now in every field. I think you just somehow feel that things are changing. The way that we relate to nature, the way that we relate to animals, it is it's changing, and it's also reflecting on how people are talking differently, and that a lot of people don't understand each other anymore. But I think it all has to do with the dominant value model that is changing. Our value system is changing. While we have been, and tourism has been growing up in this industrialized model of earning more money, and that's why we have been producing also like a mass tourism, if you want, and they're the mass tourists. And now we see that this is probably not the future. And while we don't know how the future will look like, you sense this transition. And I think then coming back to how we started, the role of the marketeer is really interesting and very hard, I think, because he or she must understand what is changing. And so what are the young people, what do they care for? Because they want to know what your organization, what they really are about. They don't just want to know your product, they want to know what does this organization do, how do they relate to climate, how do they take up the responsibility, where are the products manufactured. So young people are much more in depth interested, so they will be loyal to you if you are open to them and if you take responsibility. And therefore I think the role of the marketeer is going to be so important in this transition times, because the customer's needs and the customer's value and his whole value system is in transition. If you know what I mean. It's sometimes difficult to explain, but I think these are so excited times now.
Exactly. And what I can relate to is the sustainability aspect of tourism from this, being in alignment with the customers' values and customers wanting to support the organizations who are more sustainability oriented and who are more
Absolutely.
responsible towards the environment and the society.
Yes, and it's sustainability, it's about green and things like that, but it's also about social responsibility.
Wonderful. Wonderful. We wish you all the best for your book, Elke, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Always nice to see you. Bye bye, Supriya.
Thanks for listening to CXO with your host, Supriya. I hope you enjoyed a dive into the nitty-gritty of customer experience. If you are committed to applying these ideas in the real world, stay tuned with me. Don't forget to check out all the links and resources in the show notes. That's all for this episode, folks. See you next time.